Welcome to your magic moon message, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Peace Dealer, and we will be utilizing an activation of wisdom as we develop this transformative awareness on this lovely Scorpio season. Okay. The sun is 4 degrees. The moon was 4 degrees Capricorn. That is an exact 60-degree angle from moon to sun. And of course, this Gemini signature, while helping us with the moon in Capricorn understand utilization, understand usage, understand order and organization, in relation to the Scorpio sun of pure awareness, transformative awareness, psychoanalytical awareness, takes us and pushes us cardinally forward to develop the shape and quality of this energy that is intensifying the social actions we took through Libra season. I know this is jargon to a lot of you, but some of you know your shit, so it's cool. And that's the language, right? That's the language barrier of a Gemini signature like this, which I'll use as an example. Don't be so perturbed by many of the people who most of what you say will go over their head or under their nose. There's more than enough people who hear you. So be mindful of how you edit your own communication to accommodate others who may not even really have the heart or the depth to understand some serious shit you're saying. And that's what I've learned about Scorpio risings, Virgo risings, people who have their third house in Capricorn or Scorpio. They're not the biggest fans of small talk. When you put a universal or social sign in a lower minded third house space, it makes small talk a bit difficult, because how do you have small talk about issues that are very deeply meaningful to you? You don't. And now regular conversations turn into 40-minute ballads to where the other person is like, it's not that deep or it's not that serious. I am not that type of person. I like small, I'm not the biggest fan of small talk, but I can have small talk. Like I got my third house in Leo. Like I could talk drama, I could talk gossip, but my moon in Capricorn does understand, at least that end of why it may not be a fan to someone more deeply introspective, like say a Scorpio personality. And it's not limited to just those signs. Anyone of any sign could have a dislike or like a small talk, but this is really now adding a grounded, practical voice to your wisdom in a way that if you think of Scorpio season as activating and integrating a transformative state of consciousness, you're understanding how to utilize that. And that utilitarian or utilization understanding is activating the cycle. This is even cooler now when we take into account by the end of this moon in Capricorn, as the moon crosses over Pluto in Aquarius and goes into Aquarius, Mercury will cross over into Sagittarius. So as Mercury reaches the end of Scorpio, with which through the third decan has conjuncted and surpassed Mars in Scorpio, heading into its pre-shadow retrograde period, this is finalizing and mastering the psychoanalytical depth with which we can process wisdom, with which we can process deep nuances and layers of social development and activity. I'm not social, so I feel like a lot of you understand this more than me. Those of you who really spend most of your day dealing with other people, being out there, you guys are going to really notice these shifts, especially as Mercury crosses over into Sag opposite Uranus, which we'll talk about during the moon in Aquarius magic moon message next. But do not necessarily sleep on a 29-degree angle of anything. This will really take into account what we've been analyzing back when Mercury was in Virgo after its retrograde through Leo earlier in the year. Once again, when I mention psychoanalysis, I'm referencing Virgo in its analysis. So it's important to remember that Virgo, relative to astrology, represents analysis. It represents precision. Before you get specific, I say Scorpio is for specific, Virgo is for precision. So Scorpio has the stinger that comes before Sagittarius's archer and arrow. And that's why even psychics who are Scorpio or astrologers, they get very specific with the predictions. I'm going to keep it more general. I'm going to keep it more vague. I don't really have Virgo in Scorpio. So it's not like I can't get specific, but I can say certain things that are somewhat general from the outside looking in, but to that individual one-on-one, it's significant to them. But like, shout out Candace, right? For Beyond the Veil, like, she'll give you some specific, like this time with this person. That's a skill. That's an ability. And you know, for those of you who really appreciate more broken down, analytical, specific, precise interpretations, show love to your Virgos, Libras, and Scorpios. Sagittarius will give you a bigger picture. And I like to use astrology to show where we have our strengths and where we can make up for our weaknesses, but not trying to be something you're not, right? So Virgo is going to represent physiological analysis. It's the side eye Virgos give you when they're accurately analyzing and breaking down your strengths and weaknesses, and they criticize. It is the sign of the critic, the extension of Virgo as a perspective through Libra, which applies the perspective, right? If Virgo is your behavioral patterns and I apply that through Libra in balancing my behavior to act towards others, where Virgo is through this criticism going to balance how I take my individuality, right? I might be talking to someone who doesn't like that I talk very loud, and so I'm going to adjust that in a way that will either bring up conflict because I don't honor that, or I balance it. Well, through Libra, from Virgo's analysis, we now dive deeper into psychoanalysis, a deeper psychological interpretation of intangible nuances based off of the physical tangible nuances we criticize analytically with Virgo. Okay, and when you understand now Scorpio being an extension of Virgo, this gives you an understanding of how we go deeper. Because of the precision of Virgo, we can get specific in Scorpio. And considering that this Scorpio season is breaking through and completing important cycles, that's going to provide this pure, intense psychological quality to influence the bigger picture and the higher perspective that Sagittarius transits will unveil and provide. So while the moon is in Capricorn, we're applying this specificity to direct and understand, I won't say control, but how to order it, how to utilize it. Especially for those of you through the new moon in Libra, which have activated new powers, or at least new social dispositions that shift the way you present your own personality and character towards others. Because no one is ever truly the same every year, and you're going to make minor to major developments relative to circumstances that you shift in your life. Whereas Scorpio is going to show you deep into the soul and into the psychological processes and, of course, events and methods that can highlight deeper habits with which Virgo began to reveal. So, with the moon that's going to oppose Jupiter in Cancer, as we are forming this grand water trine, which is creating more cohesion and alignment, especially relative to liquidity, especially relative to how much more we feel we understand ourselves and how we bridge that through Scorpio and transform our awareness and taking how much deeper we can tap into who we are. Bridging back to Pisces of now how that shapes our belief systems. Capricorn is going to be the opposition to Jupiter and Cancer to ground and direct how much more this can flow. So once we go from Scorpio to Capricorn and Moon in Pisces, we'll understand coming into the end of the week how our belief systems will align with this transforming quality of our psychoanalytical awareness. Other than that, it's also going to give you an account of how to offset this sense of expansion so you're not feeling too much. Sometimes we need the Capricorn to let us know where we're being too emotional, or at least help us understand what needs greater order in our life. We also want to take into account the square Moon in Cap will be making to Venus in Libra relative to its previous conjunction to Libra when the Moon was in Libra, okay, or to Venus when the Moon was in Libra. And now the 90-degree angle from Moon to Venus will give us the grounded integration to highlight how we are currently polishing our relationships with people. And what more mature responses and appropriate direction we can begin to move this while we're actively transforming everything in our life. What I like about this is it's going to be the grounded footing to prepare us for yet another Moon Aquarian activation, Moon Pluto Aquarius activation at the beginning of the degree. And of course, as the Moon begins to sextile Saturn, North Node, and Neptune, which is now retrograded back into Pisces, it's going to align this understanding of utilization and direction towards what we're meant to believe. And that's where the Moon in Capricorn brings with it an appropriate groundedness that enables us to realistically push forward. Okay? By the way, I don't know, some of you may have not watched the monthly peace report I did, but I had mentioned that I'm going to start door dashing and I plan to get an e-bike, and two people hooked it up. They hooked it up with, great funds to help me buy that, and it's on the way. So I'm gonna receive it like tomorrow. I'm gonna ride it around, and if you're in the Vegas area, I might just DoorDash. I should have done this earlier, to be honest, but better late than never. But that being said, y'all, this will definitely add a lot more practicality in order to feel a sense of direction. And even to the square with Aries, this will really challenge ego vulnerabilities that will highlight maybe where you're either being too selfish or not selfish enough relative to, of course, what depth you're directing all of these intentions towards. Because remember, at this stage, with the 60 to 90 degree angle of the Moon to the Sun, we're still activating, we're still planting seeds. Once the Moon goes into Aquarius and squares the Sun, first quarter square, we're going to start to integrate, and those seeds will break through the ground. So since we're in a transit of wisdom, we're going to integrate knowledge that supports this wisdom. Collective universal knowledge, events throughout the world that shape the transformation of how you approach society. Shout out to really cool dude who's been kind of talking to me about the lunar cycle versus solar cycle. There's some confusion around like, oh, we're supposed to have 13 months instead of 12 months. And a lot of people who mention that don't understand that the lunar sinusoidal cycle and the solar sinusoidal cycle are exclusively different. So you can actually do both of them at the same time. It's just the reason why we go by the sun as opposed to the moon really isn't for some conspiracy theory. It's not because people are trying to, trust me, I like conspiracy theories. So I like conspiracies. Most of the ones I believe in aren't theories. You know what it is. So like, I'm not trying to be like the overly nerdy, whatever, but it's important to get that insight. It's not that work done to calculate this shit was for nothing. 13 months come from a 28-day cycle between the moon. The moon, of course, takes 28 days to go through the zodiac. So if you account for each 28-day cycle, it will be 13 cycles. But the sun cycle is 30 days versus 28 days. Since we're measuring the light, it takes 30 days in order for the sun to go through a season, to go through a sign. And that extra 2 days accounts for, of course, a whole month, which shortens it to 12. And then we also have to account for leap years. So ideas about, the 13 months being more connected to the goddess and the fact, that's all cap. It's bullshit. It's not that it's untrue, but whenever you kind of set it in a way where like there's this agenda to kind of mislead you, no one's stopping you from adopting a lunar sign circuit, but there's a reason why, to account for missing days that a 28-day, 13-month cycle will do, we do the 30-day sun cycle. But I just wanted to clear that up because I know that could be very confusing. And most people who bring it up don't always bring the mathematical reasoning behind it. So it's just important to brush that up. Just like I'll always remind you, the sun right now is in the constellation of Libra. But the reason why we don't say it's Libra season is because we do not mistake constellations for zodiac signs. That is just brain dead. Okay, that's just not smart. So we are within the zodiacal sign space of Scorpio. Okay, 6 degrees, 4 degrees is 214 degrees off the ecliptic as an imaginary space mathematically divided into 30-degree spaces. And you can do both. We're in the zodiac sign of Scorpio while being in the constellation of Libra, constellations which do not have equal 30-degree separations because they're not zodiac signs. So it's just something to keep in mind. Even though zodiac signs were probably named after constellations, this understanding of the zodiac and its relationship with the ecliptic helps you to really make do with this misinformation out there, with people making you think your sign is shifted. That's hogwash. Anyway, other than that, I hope you enjoy this. The wisdom you'll be developing, you'll understand how to direct it and utilize it to feel like you're moving forward before we come into a more extraordinarily advanced and supernatural understanding through the moon in Aquarius. And as Mercury reaches 29 degrees Scorpio, the psychoanalysis your brain ahead of your conscious awareness is calculating and processing should, somewhat opposite Uranus, provide unconventional and innovative ideas. And until next time, peace.